Okay. So, hello, John. I am so thrilled and blessed to interview you today because Alliance for Science and GMO answers are like my ready reckoner for any GMO concepts. And also, I'm really curious to know more about you, your contributions, and your perceptions about GMO as a consumer as part of my GMO outreach community project.
Great. Well, it's nice to meet you, and I'm impressed by your efforts here.
Thank you. So I guess we can start off with the questions right now. So the first one is, could you please explain about GM food?
Okay. So, so maybe you could ask me just a little more specifics on that, or is there
Well,
one?
just like in general, like a general question to start off.
Okay. So I think GM foods are something that are quite ubiquitous in the food system, particularly in the West. I think they're also an area that has a lot of misunderstanding and miscommunication about it, and fear. Part of that's been generated intentionally, and some of it is just consumer lack of information and lack of awareness.
Okay. Do you consider GM food to be safe?
Yes, I do feel like GM foods are safe. They've been on the market for about 30 years now, and they go through a regulatory and testing process before they're released. So, in many respects, they're actually safer than other foods that don't go through that process. And there is a general scientific consensus that GM foods are as safe as other foods. So, there's no real concern there.
I was also wondering if you read the labels on food products.
Yes, I do. I'm usually looking for what's the protein content, how much fat and fiber do they have, and things like that. And just in general, what are the ingredients?
Okay. What do you think is the main benefit of GM food?
I think primarily what we've seen, how GM foods have been used so far, is that it has helped farmers deal with pests and the weed problem. It's also helped them increase their production because they're able to minimize the pressure that's caused by insect pests and weeds, which do actually cause a lot of crop loss, particularly in developing nations. So I think that's one benefit. Another benefit is that I think the ones that are developed with the BT technology that are insect resistant, those do really work to reduce pesticide use, which is, I think, something most everyone would think would be a positive. And a lot of the new research that's being done on GM foods, um, offering things like, improved nutrition, even things like reduced use of fertilizer and other environmental benefits. So I think we'll continue to see more benefits as the technology proceeds.
Okay. Do you think the benefits of GM foods outweigh its potential risks?
I do. I think because the potential risks aren't really well identified in terms of, I think some of those risks are actually more concerns or fears than actual risks. And so I think that the benefits that we've seen so far have outweighed any risks or any harms that we've seen come out of it, which haven't really been any documented harms.
Okay. So you don't like purposefully like avoid GM foods, or like I should actually say genetically engineered foods. I think that's the more specific.
Yes, I think now the technical term for labeling is bioengineered. So
Yeah.
no, I do not specifically avoid those foods.
Okay. But have you also ever bought like organically grown foods?
Yes, I do. I have nothing against organic. As a matter of fact, I used to eat entirely organic because I was, like many people, I had misunderstanding and fear about genetically modified foods. And then once I learned about them, I realized that those fears were not founded in reality. So I do still buy organic if it's a product I like. If it's produce that looks really good and is less priced than conventional, then I would buy that. So um, I'm open to the best product at the best price.
What do you think about the labeling in today's foods, like non-GMO or GMO labels?
I think, well, So recently, the US government did pass the law that requires food with bioengineered ingredients to be labeled. And so that is coming into effect now. So people will be able to, clearly see if a food has been developed with bioengineered ingredients. I have some problem with the non-GMO project, primarily because I see that on foods that there is no GM component of it. So it seems to me like I've seen it on salt, I've seen it on water, I've seen it on, I can't think of another thing, but ingredients that there are no GM counterparts. So to me, that seems like false advertising. I think it's just a marketing gimmick, and basically is intended to generate fear of GM without presenting an alternative as actually something better.
Yeah, in fact, I think one of the foods that we bought here, I forgot what it was actually quite a while back. But basically, I think it said it was non-GMO, but then I looked at the nutrition facts. It actually had some GMO products in there, I think. So I think that was
Hmm.
really like bad false advertising. So I think that was just
I
one
think,
example of my own life, but I
yeah,
thought that was like
I
because
think,
I really thought that was not GMO. I usually like I don't really care what I eat, either like non-GMO or GMO, because we don't really know yet about like like what GMOs actually are, like what they actually do, or I should say their potential risks and all that. But like I found it so frustrating to see that they just label it completely wrong. So yeah.
yes, that is frustrating. There really aren't regulations about that. And there are much stricter regulations on labeling GM foods than there are on labeling non-GM foods. It's more of an internal marketing structure, so they regulate themselves primarily, which is different than organic, where there are clear standards. So I'll just make the distinguishing between those.
So do you think that genetically modified foods would dominate the future?
I think I think there's always going to be a mix of food, just because farmers like to grow different things for different reasons. I think that the organic industry is strong and is probably not going to disappear anytime soon. I think there may actually be some shifts in the organic labeling and standards to allow some particularly gene edited products, things like that. So I think as gene editing continues to develop and starts to work on more consumer oriented products, like things like coffee and chocolate and wine and oranges and things that people really particularly value, I think we'll see more of it in the grocery stores. But my thought is, agriculture is such a difficult thing for farmers to pull off, that every farmer should be able to grow whatever they think is going to be the most effective crop for their particular growing conditions, their market needs, and their own livelihood. So I think there's room for everybody out there.
Okay. So I was just wondering, when you buy foods, do you care mainly about the nutrition value, like whether if it's like GMO or non-GMO?
My main interest is I like to buy food that's healthy and food that isn't highly processed. And so, frankly, a lot of highly processed foods, I might avoid those, not because they have GM products in them, but because they are highly processed. So that's my main interest as a food consumer, is healthy, nutritious, whole food.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask if you're interested about like also like the cost as well, but I think you already explained that that's like your main
Mhm.
interest. So
Yeah, I
uh,
would say it's my main interest because I have the luxury of not having to watch every penny at the grocery store, which I know is not the reality of a lot of people. They have to buy really what is cheapest. So, but cost is important because I can't see spending 3 times as much for something that's organic that I know isn't really any better nutritionally, or so it's always a trade-off.
okay. So let's see. Um, All right, so it's one of the last few questions, I think, or last
Okay.
two questions actually. So, what is your overall opinion of genetically modified foods?
My overall opinion is that I think that initially the crops that were developed were things that were developed with the farmer in mind. So they had traits like herbicide tolerance and pest resistance that were important to farmers. That's primarily what's out on the market right now. But I think that we are seeing this big push toward other traits that are more climate sensitive, environmentally sensitive, and also better nutrition, better quality. So I think that that's the trend that we'll start to see with GM foods. I think that's a really positive trend. I think right now I think overall I have a positive feeling about GM foods, and I feel unhappy that they've been given a bad rap, because I think that it's created a lot of unnecessary fear in people's minds.
Okay. So it's the final question. So I was just wondering what's the best way to reach to my like community by creating like awareness, like not in terms of, uh, um, talking like about meetings and all that, like Zoom meetings, setting up Zoom meetings with other people. But I'm trying to say like, in terms of spreading the right information. I mean, we don't know too much about GMOs, as I said earlier on. So I was just wondering what's the best way to spread like the best information, and like what kind of information, like I should talk about, and like, educate my local community.
So first, I like your idea of making sure you have good information, because there is a lot of information out there about GM, but it's not all accurate, including some information that is put out by researchers at various institutions. So you do have to be careful in looking for information. So I think it's good for people to read widely. I think a lot of the information that's put out by government sources has been accurate. It tries to be impartial at least. I think at the Alliance for Science, we do make a really strong effort to make sure our information is accurate. So once you get good information, then I think what's important is just to talk to people about it casually, because research has shown that most people don't change their mind about something when you present them with facts. It's by sharing your own experience with it. So someone like you, who is obviously intelligent and well-read and involved in his community, if you talk about what you've done, your research, what conclusions you found, and just casually talk to, people in your community, then I think that's the best way for the information to get out. It's just, there's a lot of one-on-one that can go.
Okay.
People trust what they hear from other people who are trustworthy.
uh, so yeah, that is actually it. So thank you so much for your time. My utmost respects via this campaign. Just thank you for helping me out so much. I really appreciate it so much, like a lot.
Well, you're very welcome, and thank you for your interest and for making time. And I'm just so glad to see a young person like you who's very excited, motivated and excited to learn about science and share the information. So
Yeah, thank you so
good
much.
luck with your 4-H project.
Yeah, yeah. As part of my, I actually so I think the main thing that motivated me to do this project was actually, I think, at the beginning of last year. So I actually attended a 4-H National Science Summit. It's an agricultural science summit where we discussed all kinds of agricultural topics, and one of them happened to be GMOs. And then
Mhm.
from then on, and also we had like lots of tension going on with our family about GMOs. We were like,
Mhm.
contending about GMOs, whether they're safe or not. And with all this chaos, that plus the agricultural summit motivated me to, like start this project. And I've been doing that ever since.
Oh, great. Well, that's often how it starts. People start talking to their friends and families, and sometimes they're opposing views. And so you did the right thing, which is to educate yourself about it so you can make a good decision. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, keep me posted on how your work goes.
Yeah, definitely I will.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Sudie. Have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you so much. Have a
Bye
good rest
bye.
of your day too.